That ought to help keep them a little on the cooler side. Now they get a nice breeze through there and get a breath of fresh air. Who doesn't like a breath of fresh air, right? Well, I guess it's time to clean this mess up finally. I want to try to save these 2x4s for what I don't know, but see if I can pull some of these staples out. Well, it's a little bit weathered, but I'm sure I'll find a use for it someday. At least I use these smaller style staples, not them great big ones. These are a little easier to come out. This one's going to be the fun one. Look how many staples I got in here holding all this mess together. Someday I'm going to need this for a project and I'm going to say, no, I'm glad I saved those. Alright, let's go get rid of this scrap. For those that have been watching the channel for a while, you'll remember that this half of the chicken house was an outside run. It was covered in chicken wire. The chickens could come outside in their leisure, you know, when it was nice out and whenever they felt like it, and get some fresh air and sun. Well, when we decided we wanted to expand our egg layer operation, we enclosed that outside chicken run and added on to it. Well, now all we have is that little 8x8 outside run on the opposite side for them to be able to come outside and get some fresh air on nice sunny days when we haven't set up the outside pasture fence yet. So we're going to fix that. We're going to build a new outside chicken run. It's going to run the full length of the hen house and the laying house. It's going to be roughly 31 feet long. The hang up I have is how deep am I going to be able to make this? Because there's really two limiting factors on that. The first one being that there's underground drainage pipe that comes from that ditch, runs right along in here and out into the swampy area to help drain the little bit of higher ground we have over here. So I got to be cognizant of that tile pipe, is so when I come off the building and I go put a hole in the ground, I don't end up putting a hole right through my drainage pipe. So it's not such a big deal on this end. I think it's far enough away I could go probably 10 feet and drill a hole and be all right. But the other end is where I think the problem's going to be. The second factor that I have is once I get to where that tile pipe is, then it starts a gradual grade uphill. So those are the two things I'm fighting. I have that drainage pipe in the ground and I have that swale or that grade uphill that I have to deal with. So first thing I'm going to do is measure out 8 feet. And we'll start here. So that's going to be right about in here. 8 feet. Now we'll measure diagonal and see how square we are. It doesn't have to be close. I just want to make sure we're not feet off, that's all. 33 feet 7 inches. Yeah, pretty close. Maybe an inch off, inch and a half off. Close enough. We ain't tuning no piano. The materials I had to do this job are a 6 foot tall roll of 2x4 welded wire mesh. It's 100 foot long. That's going to be more than enough to do this job, but I didn't want to run short. On each outside corner, we have these 4 to 5 inch diameter pressure treated poles. They're 8 foot long. Those are going to get cemented in the ground. We're not going to do any kind of bracing with them. The cement should hold them just fine. We're not going to be putting a lot of real tension on these poles, but I wanted something a little bit more substantial than just putting a T-post in the corner. And then to fill the gaps between the building and these round poles, I have T-posts. I got 10 of them. Not sure I'm going to need all of them again, but I'd rather have too many than not enough. So that's what we got for doing this job. So the heck with it. We're going to go 2 boot lengths out. We're going to dig a hole. I think we're deep enough. I think we might be too deep. But the nice part is we didn't run in any tile pipe. Well, there's the second hole. Can you see the bottom? That hole's about 28 inches deep. Not quite as deep as the other hole, but I do have to say one thing. This hole dug a lot harder than the other one. So this was probably in undisturbed soil from when we put the tile pipe in. The other side, I think, was pretty well right over the top of that tile pipe. But we didn't get into it, so that's a good thing. I need to go get a couple bags of concrete. So tomorrow, I'll get the poles in, get them square and set with a couple bags of concrete, 1 bag per each, and then we'll move on with the project. So we'll see you tomorrow. This morning I went and got 2 bags of ready mix concrete. So we're gonna go down and try to get these poles set before the rain comes. They're calling for rain, pretty steady rain later on this afternoon. And honestly, it's clouding up pretty good, and looking on the radar, there's some rain to the north of us. So I'm hoping I can get this job done before the rain comes. So let's get busy. Before we get started on the poles, I got to refill the feed bin inside the chicken house. We're getting low on feed in there, so I got, I don't know, I think there's 8 bags here of chicken feed that we're gonna put in there quick. Well, there's feed for probably the next 2 weeks. Alright, now for the basket hand. First thing I want to do is measure these poles and make sure they are exactly 8 foot. They're a little longer, that's fine, but I don't want to make sure they're any shorter. That's good, 96 inches, 8 foot. So the first thing I want to do is make sure that I'm going to have enough poles sticking out of the ground for my 6 foot welded wire mesh. So that's obviously roughly 2 foot of pole in the ground. So first thing we're going to do is go measure the first hole and get close to 2 feet. Alright, so the first hole, got some water in it, is right around 26 and a half, call it 27 inches deep. So we're going to backfill just a little bit of dirt into the hole and measure back down to that. That gives us a good starting point. Not 6 feet, we gotta come up some more. That'll work. Close enough. That's pretty level there. Got plenty of room. That's pretty level there. Works out nice that there's already some water in the hole, so I don't have to add any. This ought to help work any air pockets that's in the concrete. Just kind of help fill the voids. Let's see how it looks now. It's kind of tipped out that way, and it's kind of tipped out that way. Doing that on purpose. As I fasten the welded wire mesh to the building, and I pull it down along here and back around, I'm hoping that there'll be a little bit of tension on these poles and that'll straighten it back up. I don't want any sagging in the fence line. I want to try to keep it as tight as possible. So I'd rather have them be leaning out just a little bit, so that way when I tension them up, then they'll be straight, rather than setting them nice and straight now and then tightening it up. Next thing you know, I got a pole that's leaning. So that's kind of my mindset. We're going to see how it works. Well, I can already tell that's not enough. That looks pretty good. I like that. I'm happy with that. One thing I hate is a partial bag of concrete laying around. What are the ladies up to? So this right here is all they have for right now for an outside run. this is exactly why we're building this. This is not near big enough for 80 chickens. So I can't wait to get this part done. All right, let's get this backfilled. Use some of these rocks for stability. There. I like it. There we are. 2 posts in the ground. We're going to give these poles a couple days to set up the concrete, more or less, before we go stretching any wire out on this. So with the rain coming, it works out really perfect to let these poles set. For those that are new to the channel, how did our chicken setup come about? Well, we started out 5 years ago with just this 8x12 shed. I got it from my brother for free. We hauled it home. I set it here on a couple cut up telephone poles. We had a dozen chickens. I built hen boxes, had a roost. That was the inside structure. Shortly after that, I added on with another 8x12 outside run that was completely covered with chicken wire. They had that to roam outside, and that was it. Then I built this on because it wasn't quite enough. We ended up getting some more chickens, and I wanted some more space for them. But I didn't want to go as high as I did with this one, because that one I intended on walking in. This one, I don't really ever intend on walking in, and I don't usually have to. That one's an 8x8 outside run, and it was open. Well, then I ended up covering that one because when it rained out or snowed, the chickens would never venture out of the laying house. So I put a roof on that, and I gave them some outside access in the wintertime, hence why there's a piece of tin up here that needs to come off. Fast forward to this past fall, we decided after 40 chickens it wasn't enough to keep up with our egg demand, so we wanted to double our capacity. So I decided to completely enclose the outside run. I added onto it another 10 or 11 feet, something like that, to make our overall inside chicken capacity good enough for 170 chickens. This chicken house is a pretty simple design and setup. It's built with 4x4 poles, got a 2x6 header. These are trusses that I built, they're homemade. And then I built it just basically like pole barn construction, and it works really, really well. The most expensive part of this whole build was this clear skylight siding. Like an 8-foot sheet of that was like $36 a sheet, and I don't even remember how much. I think there's like 16 sheets on here. But I wouldn't have it any other way. The daylight that the chickens get through this works out really well. It keeps them warm in the winter months when it's cold. And you know, it's neat being able to look out here at any time of the day and just see the chickens going back and forth. You'll see them sitting here eating their chicken feed. The roost they do use, the older birds that are used to inside, they still roost inside, but the new Rhode Island Reds, they'll use this outside roost. Well, this is our chicken setup. This is what we do. Right now we're up to 80 birds, but like I said, we built it to be able to hold 170 birds. When I had the idea of adding on to this and I pitched it to Stacy, she's like, build it bigger so that way if we want to expand on chickens, we don't have to expand on infrastructure again. And I like the way she thought, so I took her advice, and that's it. Well, that's a wrap on this project for the day. And you know what else? I was glad to finally have a sleeveless t-shirt day. I'm really looking forward to many more of those days to come. When it comes to our chicken house and our setup here, this is what we did. It works really well for us. If you're going to do chickens on any sort of scale for any length of time, especially in our climate and environment, if you're going to run them through the winter, you got to have more of a permanent structure like this. Does it have to be identical or exactly like this? No, there's a lot of different examples out there. Pick one that works for you. But one thing I will tell you is those things that you go buy at your mom and pop box stores, they're not cut out to be out here in the winter months. You know, they're small, they're made of lightweight material. They're just, the chickens won't survive in an area like that. So I mean, if you want to move them inside a garage or a barn, if you have that space, then that'll work. But to solely buy one of those and think you're going to raise chickens all year round in them things, not going to happen. So I hope you found something informative about our video today. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you like our channel, as always, we ask you to subscribe. I hope you have a great rest of your day. We'll see you next time.